This video was brought to you by Stormberg, a better route planner, MisterGreen, Kempower and Marcus Bil. Yo, what's up? Today we're going to talk about the Mercedes EQE and its charging. So let's just roll the tape. I'll show you now. So you see that the EQE has lower voltage than the EQS. I heard that it has 2 less modules than the EQS, and you see that the amp is at 500, so it's capped at 500. That's the CCS2, except for Tesla, they go a little bit beyond that. But that's why you see that it's taking only 170 kilowatt roughly. If the voltage would be higher, it would be able to take 200 kilowatt like the EQS, but they just designed it differently. And then I also included the i4, which is slightly cheaper, but similar price, I mean similar class-ish. And then also e-tron GT is actually similar price as the EQE. And again, the e-tron GT is 800 volt base, so you see that it charges way faster and doesn't have that limitation for voltage versus current at least. And then the i4, okay, i4 had a nice jolt, so actually the i4 is well, second place. E-tron GT is in the first place. But if you compare the i4 versus the EQE, you see that the i4 had a nice jolt in the beginning, but now it seems like the EQE seems has a slightly flatter curve, so the i4 starts throttling down a little bit. As for the EQS, okay, it's a bigger battery. It's actually the biggest battery of them all here, so it charges way faster, but also slightly thirstier. You have to keep that in mind. So in terms of range, I guess the percentage on the EQE versus the EQS could be comparable. But look here now what's going on. So the i4, if you compare i4 versus the EQE was kind of slow in the beginning. i4 had a nice boost in the start because you see that the voltage in the i4 is actually quite high, even higher than the EQS. That's why it was able to pump out over 200 kilowatt in the beginning. But right now, it seems like the EQE is starting to catch up. It has a nicer, flatter curve. We're going to show you guys a charging curve afterwards, but which car is going to be, well, okay, e-tron GT though is just in a completely different league now. It just charges like a boss. Now, however, you might think that the 800 volt system makes the whole battery pack superior, but by the end of the day, you still have the same amount of cells in there. You just arrange it differently, but of course you overcome that voltage problem. But you can also redesign it, like we've seen in the i4 and the EQS. So really, 500 amp is not really the problem. And then how fast are we killing the e-tron GT battery, right? By pumping in over 250 kilowatt for such a long time. But so it's quite clear that the e-tron GT will be the first to 90%, but then which car will be second to 90%? Well, that's interesting, because you see now while I was talking now, the EQE is slowly catching up on the i4, inching in. So it's like the i4 has more like a Tesla charging curve, whereas the EQE and EQS, they have more like the typical German auto, where you charge nice and flat and maybe not that fast, but you have that flat charging curve, which many people like. I prefer actually the i4 charging curve, where you have a nice boost in the beginning, because then you can choose whether you want to go for 50%. Whereas if you have a flat curve, let's say even like the fat e-tron, then you kind of need to go to 90% every time to utilize the advantage of it. But yes, wow, right now the EQE is about to catch up i4, and then EQS is also, wow, this is, you see, neck on neck really, EQS versus EQE. So EQS again has a bigger battery, so it's natural that it charges faster, but it almost seems like they have the same charging, C rating charging curve, the EQS versus EQE. Wow, right with this. Okay, but then, however, the i4 seems to have a somewhat flat curve towards the end, because now in EQE versus i4 battle, you see that the EQE is starting to fall a little bit behind. So keep in mind that the EQE is 100 kilowatt hours, the i4 is only 84 kilowatt hour. So, but what you guys see now, okay, the e-tron went actually past 90%, it's going for 100%, but just to show you guys. But then the e-tron and the GT is doing some kind of weird dance now. But EQS seems to, no, okay, i4 actually went to 90% first, and then EQS went to, it's kind of neck on neck now. But I have to point out something here, is that the EQE session I charged here was actually not optimal. But when I look at the minutes versus when I did 1,000 kilometer challenge, when the battery was warmer, okay, I think we are finished there. Okay, let me explain here. So this charging session I did was after range test, and normally I would be able to heat up the battery and it is fine. But the problem with the Mercedes is that you have to navigate to, not to that charger, you have to navigate to another charger or I mean another destination, and then you have to let the car pick a charging stop. Then the car will preheat the battery for that charging stop it picked. So it's kind of cumbersome to do that during the range test. Plus I had limited time because this EQE, normally when I borrow press cars, I can borrow them for a whole week, but with the EQE I only had 3 days, and you can imagine 3 days I have to do range test, banana box test, acceleration, noise, braking test, 1,000 kilometer challenge, driving impression. I have to do all that within 3 days. So unfortunately I couldn't have enough time to do a proper charging session preparation, but I thought it was enough because I saw that it was 31 degrees Celsius. The car kept the temperature at around 32 degrees Celsius in the battery pack. Actually the AMG shows that it's like an AMG only feature in the software. Well, it turns out when I did 1,000 kilometer challenge and the temperature was higher, and I also started from let's say 5% or 2% whatever, versus starting at 10% like I normally do on my charging test, then there was a difference, because then we build up that heat until we hit 10%. So let's just wild guess, maybe at 10% you will then, instead of having 32 degrees, you will have 35 or 38 degrees. And that means that you have a nicer and flatter curve. So I can show you now. So yeah, what I did was that I looked at the charging sessions during 1,000 kilometer challenge, and I managed to get pretty good data from it. So I actually collected the best data from the EQE. So the numbers you see here is not what you saw on the charging comparison, but actually more like the best case where it was. But I saw that even though it was slightly slower, we were talking about just 1 minute. So that's why I guess for the comparison, no big deal. But I can show you this is more interesting, right? The graph. So the EQE is the red line here. You see, it's nice and flat versus i4. You see, the i4 and the EQE was kind of fighting neck on neck here. But the i4 had a nice jolt here, 200 kilowatt, which gives it a nice boost. And then, but then for pretty much the rest of the charging session, you see that the EQE was faster. But just like Tesla, also when you have this nice jolt in the beginning, you get then a head start that it's almost, well, actually it was impossible for the EQE to catch up. But many people like this flat curve, other people like this boost. And then you can see also versus the EQS. So if you want to compare, if you consider EQE versus the EQS, you see that they kind of follow each other slightly, but then actually it kind of falls on the same level here. So it could seem like almost like, you see here, if you try to draw a line here roughly, then the EQS could have been charging faster. So I also wonder, maybe the EQS was also slightly colligating, because I also did the same thing that I actually don't remember what I did, but the EQS was tested during winter. And it was kind of cold outside, so maybe the EQS session was not optimal. And then you see here the e-tron GT is just charging very fast, killing the battery. Now lately, back in the old days, I would say, oh, it's charging like a boss. But then I've seen that charging this fast might kill the battery. And why do I keep saying it nowadays? Well, because actually, the e-tron GT, at least the Porsche Taycan has it, where you can limit the charging speed. It won't be like this if you limit it. It says it will limit it to preserve the battery health or something. Then actually the charging graph will be something like the EQE, or even lower. Actually, even lower. Yeah. So you kind of almost half the charging speed-ish, right? EQS also has the same feature, but EQS, if you enable that one, it will limit to 100 kilowatts. So it will actually stay 100 kilowatts. I've never tried it before. Maybe I should do that. It will stay at 100 kilowatt max, way below the 200 kilowatt here. And also it will stop charging at 80% roughly here. I don't know what the heck happened with the charge here. It's supposed to say percentage here, right? So, because remember that what kills the battery is a product of temperature multiplied by time multiplied by state of charge. So the higher state of charge, the higher time, or the higher temperature, then it's bad. And then if you have all those three things together, which usually happens here, then that's bad. So by cutting it at 80%, you kind of limit the damage that it will do. So and what else? The i4. Okay, the i4 doesn't have that feature. Yeah, EQE and EQS has those features. So that's why maybe charging that fast will kill the battery, unless we have new battery tech, or we have fat cells, or we have bigger battery or something else. So yeah, but I think in general, what you want to do is actually just like this one, the i4, is that usually at low state of charge you can take higher current and then you drop a little bit. So normally Teslas would be like that. They charge really fast on the bottom, where it's kind of safe, and then towards the end it drops. So it doesn't have that flat curve, which could kill the battery over time. So anyway, I think that's going to be it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for watching, and talk to you later.